And welcome back to Broadside Gaming with me, Zug. So I was sent a build from some of our delightful viewers, and also I should say, if you do want to send builds and stuff, the best way to do that is through the Instagram that is linked on the page. It's the best way to send stuff to us that we'll actually see, because the email is being massively annoying at the moment. But yeah, if you do want to send stuff in or want us to check stuff out, send it to the Instagram stuff. DM us there, and we can take a look at builds and stuff for you. But anyway, on what I was saying, we were sent this build, and I've had a look at it. I understand what's going on a bit, but there are a few things that I would change. So we'll start off with like the weapon setup and stuff, which I basically agree with, apart from one or two things. So first off, we have the weapon. It's the Carsolus pickaxe Mark II, which is my favourite pickaxe. Modifiers exactly how I would have them. Damage, cleave damage, crowd control, and penetration. Lol. And defense is the dump. Perk wise, again, absolutely fine. Unyielding and carapace. Pretty decent way to set up the perks. Pretty much how I set my one up. Apart from the unyielding, because I tend to use my ranged weapon a bit more for the unyielding. But with this build, I understand why. With its carapace unyielding. Because the ranged weapon is for a very different thing. So again, totally reasonable way of setting it up. Now for the blessings, we've got Confident Strike and Head Taker. Confident Strike is a good choice, especially if you're pushing really high Havoc stuff. Being able to farm back toughness is really important, so it's a good choice. Head Taker, on the other hand, I do think you're missing out. I know with Head Taker it's just on hit, but when you're pushing higher difficulties, farming those kills isn't really going to be a problem. So I do think Slaughterer still outperforms Head Taker. It just takes a tiny amount of, push to get it going. But that's not to say it's useless, because Head Taker does have its uses. Especially, say, okay, the scenario is here. You're in a high damage situation, crushers, bulwarks, everything around you is all crazy, and there are monstrosities, say a chaos spawn. So right, you got crushers and a chaos spawn bearing down on you. You can't proc Slaughterer, because those targets are not going to go down quick enough for you to be able to reliably get those stacks. So yes, Head Taker is a good option there, but Slaughterer is going to be better 80% of the time, but Head Taker will definitely win out in those types of situations. So again, it's situational. So this is not a bad way of setting up the pickaxe at all. You're losing a small amount of damage to have that reliability. So that's all cushy with me. I think it's a good way of doing it. Now, we're talking about unyielding on the pickaxe because of the ranged weapon. So let's have a look. So unfortunately, my heavy stubber is still awful, because I haven't had time to level it up, because I've been leveling up every other goddamn weapon in the game. Now, the heavy stubber. This is the best choice for the Ogryn if you need to reliably snipe out an enemy. Because you're never really going to be using it like this. You're going to be using it like this to do exactly that. This is purely sniping. So, for that, modifiers are as such. Damage, critical bonus, collateral stability. Range, you're never going to be that far away from it, so range is a good dump. Perk-wise, Flak and Maniac. Maniac is going to be your main choice, and Flak, most prevalent armor type in the game, and most specials are either unarmored or flacked. So, very, very, very good pick. Surgical, it's just going to give you that reliable punch, as it's 10% critical chance for every 0.25 seconds while aiming, stacks 10 times, the charges all stacks upon firing. This is going to give you that real thump. Now, here is the choice though. The second blessing, Deadly Accurate, I think is better than what they've chosen here, which is Opening Salvo. Opening Salvo will work, especially if you're not confident in the fact that you can't snap off a weak spot hit. Obviously, it's far more difficult than I'm showing here because I'm in the meat grinder, everything's standing perfectly still, nothing stressful is going on. But I am of the opinion that Deadly Accurate is the better blessing to go for, but does require a bit more practice with. Opening salvo for a like a guaranteed hit. So let's have a quick look at the masteries for that. So we can get the actual numbers for you. Blessings menu, there we go. Where the hell is it? Opening salvo, yeah. So it'll be 20% strength on its first shot. So you snap off that first shot, and it's going to hit them for an extra 20%. Whereas Deadly Accurate is 100% critical weak spot damage. So you've got to choose between 20% guaranteed, no matter where you hit them, or 100% critical weak spot damage if you can snap off that shot. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad choice. I'm just saying I'd probably take Deadly Accurate over it. But Opening Salvo is a fine choice for it. Now, for the curios, I usually go for the 1 health and 2 toughness, whereas the build I was shown was 2 health, 1 toughness. This is more personal preference. Every like high-end Ogryn player has different ways of doing it, and that's not to say it's wrong at all. Like if you go on any of the game lengths and builds on the most upvoted ones, these guys will have their own personal way of preferring to do it. I prefer to go for the toughness route, especially if I'm using something like Confident Strikes, because it gives you more of a cushion. But the max health way is, again, a good way of doing it. It's just personal preference. So it'll literally just be switching one of these for max health instead of toughness. Now, the build. Let's just jump in and have a look. So, starts off pretty simple. You know, we're going with heavyweight into smash 'em and the best defense. Coming down here into my favorite, which is frag bomb. And it's kind of this middle square that I don't entirely agree with. I would probably drop strongman. 10% damage resistance on elite or special kill. There are better things down at the bottom of the tree that I think could be picked up for this point. So I would get rid of strongman. Soften them up. Enemies damaged by your melee attacks take 15% more damage. Always good. Payback time plus 15% damage for 5 seconds after a successful dodge or being hit by an attack. Again, payback time is always a good choice. Can't hit me again. 20% damage resistance versus ranged for 2.5 seconds after being hit by a ranged attack with a 4-second cooldown. Some people swear by this since the update. I'm still not completely convinced by it. I'm really, really not that convinced. So instead of that, you could go for Focused Fighter, which is 4% damage resistance from melee attacks on a successful melee attack, stacking 5 times. Stacks are removed upon taking damage from a melee attack. So that's 20% damage resistance from melee attacks, you know, after you've hit a few things, or 20% damage resistance versus ranged for 2.5. They basically do more or less the same thing. One's melee focused, one's ranged focused. I would probably go for Focused Fighter, because at this point you get the 15 toughness, or you get 5% toughness damage reduction. I do think, let's just steal a point from there, I do think these two are better. And this is my opinion. I might be horrifically wrong, but in my long sordid experience of covering Tide games, I do think these two will work out slightly better in the end. So next up, going down to this part of the tree, there are a few other bits here that I kind of would prefer to take, over some other things. But so Loyal Protector. Taunt enemies within 12 meters, making them attack only you for 15 seconds. The effect repeats after 3 seconds and after 6. So Law Protector is much, much better now. Into No Pain, Law Protector, and its repeats replenish 10% toughness, and an additional 0.5% each 1 second per enemy affected, up to 10% for 3 seconds. And then just a big, nice damage boost against things that are hit by it. That's all great. All groovy. Love it. Then we come down into here. Rending into Beaten Back. Picking up True Strike. So there should be a point in there as well. Picking up Bonebreaker's Aura. And grabbing Batter, one of the best talents in the tree, especially for going melee. And then we have to think about Crunch. Up to 15% damage and a bonus 30% impact bonus on your charged melee attack based on the charge time. Especially when we haven't got thrust on the weapon. I'm not sure not taking it's a good choice, but we will leave it for now. And we'll have a look around. See if we can find a point somewhere. Because Crunch is quite a beefy damage pool to be missing. And also we're missing out on Slam. 25% impact bonus on melee attack. Staggering an enemy with a melee attack replenishes 5% stamina or 1 second cooldown. Now, it's not just the impact we're missing out on here, it's the stamina replenishment, which is also going to keep us in the fight a bit more and give us the ability to, block, dodge, and parry. So, not entirely sure I'm missing out on these two, but as I said, we'll go down the tree a bit more and we'll have a look. So we're going into the melee damage boost. Toughness boost. We're grabbing Bruiser. And then we're picking up Get Stuck In. Now, Get Stuck In has become less relevant. It's still good, but I feel it's slightly less relevant than it used to be. On activating your combat ability, you and your allies' incoherency gain plus 20% movement speed and are also immune to stun and suppression. It's a good team buff, but, I'm not entirely convinced by it. And then we've got No Hurting Friends. Now, this is where we have to do a bit of crunching. So it's 2.5% strength on damage taken by you or your allies' incoherency. 5 max stacks, last 10 seconds, plus 15% toughness damage reduction on max stacks. So this has given us 15% strength on either you being hit or a friend being hit, and 15% toughness damage reduction on max stacks. But we are having to jump through another point to get to it. When we've got Heavy Hitter down here, which gives us slightly less than this. Or Heavy Hitter grants 15% toughness replenishment from melee kills for each stack. Now, this is where I think these 2 points could be used slightly better. I know it's not the exact amount, but we could gain 1.5% toughness damage for each stack. So let's think about this. Just doing some really quick math because I'm absolutely terrible at it. So that is 12% toughness damage reduction down from 15. But is also giving us access to Crunch. Now, I've had, sporadic reports that Crunch is actually mislabeled here. And it's actually 30% bonus damage, but I don't know. I still can't verify this, so don't take this verboten. But with this, we have a pseudo thrust, which stacks up very quickly with the Carsolus. And we've got 12% damage reduction through the Heavy Hitter talent. So I think this is more an up to you kind of choice here. So it's Don't Hurt a Thing and Crunch for team buff and No Hurting Friends. I think I would probably do it like this, to be honest. But it's not to say that it's not a good build. I just don't think I would generally go that direction with it. But if you want to try it out, absolutely go for it. In fact, I suggest you try it out. Don't take my word for it. A lot of this does come out of personal preference and how I prefer to play the Ogryn. We have a big, wonderful tree here. So why not try every possible avenue? And if you do try out the build as it was originally shown, let me know how you felt about it. If you enjoy this, please do let me know. If you don't like it like that, also let me know. But if you've enjoyed the video, folks, please do like and subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It really does help us out, and I shall see you all for the next one. So until then, take it easy, and I'll see you later.